Hello again, everyone. I'm John Evans, and welcome to another episode of One-on-One. Sheri Lynch joined Bob Lacey 26 years ago, never thinking that their partnership would last. But it has. She was working here at WECT in Wilmington, in this very building I'm in right now, when she got the opportunity to take a job in Charlotte. That eventually led to forming the Bob and Sheri radio show, which is still going strong, now heard in more than 36 markets across the country and all around the world. You can listen to it every weekday morning in Wilmington on 102.7 WGNI. The show has been nominated for top awards. Sheri herself has won awards from the Alliance for Women in Media for her inspirational contributions to the industry. She's on top, but that's just part of Sheri Lynch's story. Her personal story is much more inspirational. Her difficult upbringing, her drive to overcome that and to achieve so much more, and to help others who are going through difficult times. That's what makes her, in my mind and in the minds of many others, an even better person than she is an entertainer. So Sheri Lynch of the Bob and Sheri Show, heard weekdays on 102.7 GNI in the Wilmington area. Welcome to One-on-One with John Evans.
Thank you, John. I'm glad to be here.
Actually, for this podcast, we're going to make it the Sheri and Bob Show because you're more important to us for this next period of time. So just for this segment, it's going to be the Sheri and Bob Show. How does that sound?
Listen, it's the Sheri and Bob Show every day. He just beat me alphabetically.
What do you remember about working in this same building where I'm sitting today at 322 Shipyard Boulevard?
Can I be honest with you? WECT was my first big job in media and one of my favorite jobs ever. I loved working there so much. I came on with a dazzling full-time salary of about $160 a week. I also was delivering pizza for Domino's. I know every square inch of Wilmington thanks to Domino's Pizza. But I got to do so many cool things. I ran camera for the newscasts. I wrote and produced commercials and promos. I went out on events. It was the greatest job and the greatest learning experience. And I worked with some really fine people. And when I left, it was because media jobs, as you know, it's a constant ladder, right? When I left, I was so heartbroken to leave Wilmington and to leave my friends and family at WECT that I would come home from my new job in Charlotte, go face down on the floor of my apartment and cry every night for 2 months.
Really?
It was pathetic. Yeah, I was a mess.
What brought you to Wilmington? I know you're Philly born, and I know you were raised in the western part of the country, but how did you actually get to Wilmington?
Well, I was in graduate school in Philadelphia working on an MFA, and a friend that I had was coming to Wilmington to work on a movie with the De Laurentiis Studios back in the day. And he persuaded me, come on, take a sabbatical from graduate school and come work on a movie, you'll love it. And I really wrestled with it, but I did my bachelor's degree in 3 years and rolled straight into my master's program. And to be honest with you, I was the youngest person there and I was exhausted and starving because I was paying for everything myself. And the prospect of taking a little bit of time off and working on a movie just sounded magical. So I took a sabbatical and I came to Wilmington and De Laurentiis went bankrupt.
Yeah.
On the same day. So that was a problem. And I'm on sabbatical. So I thought, well, I'm not going to, turn tail and run back to Philly. This is a beautiful place and I'm going to, by God, find a way to stay here. So I started applying for jobs, and by just sheer luck and magic and serendipity, WECT had an opening for a producer. And Tom Cheetham, the production manager, called me up, and he's just the most wonderful man ever, and offered me the job. And I could not believe it. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be working for an NBC affiliate and living in this beautiful city. It was like a lottery win. It was heaven. But it turns out that $160 a week is not that much money. And so that's how I ended up working for Domino's too. I just look back with so much love and affection on that chapter of my life, and still have friends in Wilmington. And would come back tomorrow. I would.
Well, here's good news. Tom Cheetham is still here. Actually, Tom Cheetham is the production manager here. I've worked with Tom here at WECT and at the other affiliate station in town, and I agree with you. Tom is one of the nicest human beings God ever put on the earth.
He's just such a fine person. And here's what I didn't know then that I know now. All of the people that I worked with at WECT, my first real career job, were these exceptional people. So I made the mistake of thinking that there were exceptional people everywhere. I know, right? Your sides hurt. It turns out that's not really the case. I mean, I worked with a wonderful man who was the anchor at the time, a guy named Ken. And just everybody in the organization was just good people. So imagine my surprise when I left WECT and discovered that all of the good people were there and that they hadn't really pollinated the rest of the business.
So you went from here to Charlotte, and how long was it before you actually got the opportunity? You were working as a producer when Bob was looking for did a nationwide search for a host, and that's how you got that. But how long were you actually kind of in Charlotte and not in radio?
About a year and 2 months or so. It wasn't very long at all. I took the job. The job that brought me to Charlotte was serendipity again, as is so often the case in your life. You don't realize it at the time. I took the job in Charlotte. I didn't want to go to Charlotte. I associated Charlotte with a place where during layovers, I would be throwing up in the bathroom from being airsick, right? Like I had no feeling for Charlotte whatsoever. Did not want to leave Wilmington, but I understood how the game was played. So I took the job in Charlotte with no intention of staying. And was actually on my way to go back to finish graduate school when I met Bob. And I produced a TV campaign for the radio station where he worked. And they called me up and invited me to lunch. And I thought it was to say thank you. See, that was before I understood that in radio, nobody says thank you. Oh, silly me. So I went out to lunch and they offered me the job hosting this radio show, which I thought was, John, I thought it was hilarious. I had never even really been in a school play. No desire to be a performer, strictly behind the scenes. And I turned it down and they thought I was crazy. And they kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And finally we arrived at a compromise. I would try it and then I could go back to graduate school. Because if we're being honest, I thought that I would last maybe a month to 6 weeks before somebody caught on that I didn't know what I was doing and fired me. And here we are today.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I want to get into your thought process because I've listened for years, but as I got into more research, it really has astounded me how you have, and I don't know the right words, you've really used this opportunity to help so many people over and above entertaining them every morning. And I say that with all due respect because, there's one thing about going in every day and saying, here's the food of the day, or like you did today when you were talking about how to Instagram your food. I mean, that to me is entertainment. That was funny. But you've also used it to help so many people. And to me, that's the ultimate show of respect because you've used your standing in life behind that radio microphone to improve people's lives every day in so many different ways.
That means a lot to me, John. And that honestly is why I've stayed in radio. I mean, I come from a rough background and I had to work really, really hard to escape that kind of tractor beam of poverty and addiction and violence and all of that. And I had big dreams for myself. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college and I wanted to pay back some of the good fortune and help that I'd had along the way. Because even though I pulled myself up out of that mess, you can be damn sure that I did not do this alone. I had a lot of support, a lot of help, and a lot of blessings. And I wanted my life to mean something. I worked so hard. I worked so hard just to have a college degree. I can't even tell you what that was like. And so I'm in radio and it's a fun job and I can't believe that I get to do it. But I never felt like I was pulling my weight, did not feel that this was an adequate payback for the life that I had been given, which is why a few years ago I went back to graduate school again and became a social worker, master's level social worker, because I thought, you know what? I do have this platform and I have this microphone, and there are people out there who are listening, and I may say the thing for them that unlocks their belief in themselves the way somebody once did that for me. And I think I can do that and be entertaining and, deliver the goods for my boss or whatever. But I just want it to be more than some clown, and I want it to do more. And a couple of years ago, I was at such a crisis point. I almost left radio and went into full-time clinical mental health because I just felt like I owed more back than I was giving back, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. But I was going to get to this later, and I had this all mapped out how this interview was going to go, and then I got ahead of myself and started telling you early on how much I think about the work for other people. But the one thing that I saw a couple of things, but one was a young lady named Sasha who wrote in Charlotte magazine, "My first job in Charlotte was for a major wire distribution company. My shift started at 6:30 in the morning. I don't like silence. I found the Bob and Sheri show on the Link in Charlotte, where you're out of. I developed an instant girl crush on Sheri and her lightning wit. I realized that Sheri, through sharing her story, was also telling my story. She was once, in her words here now, she was once poor white trash. Her father was a felonious drug addict. She told DEA raids, living with her grandmother. Sheri not only told her story, she owned her story. She did not live in fear, silence, or shame. During my 11 years in Charlotte, I have learned of true love, gained loyal friends, and endured devastating heartbreak, just as Sheri did for me. I know that my purpose is to use my words and let all others that are still hiding in silence know that they are not alone. I don't plan on ever being quiet again." You can't do much better than that, Sheri. You can't.
Oh, I'm done. Yeah. I mean, when somebody makes room in their life and their heart for you like that, like, I'm done. It could all end right now. And I would feel like I've had an extraordinary run and have done as much as I could do with what I had. I just, as she said, I never wanted to live in silence or shame. And I never wanted anyone to have that power over me. When you grow up like I did, like Soch did, you grow up powerless and victimized. And there are two ways to go with that. Well, actually, there are probably more than two. The way that I chose was, you will not hold power over me. I will not be your victim. And I will certainly not let you use my past as leverage against me. So I've never made any secret of where I come from. Mm-hmm. And I've never made any secret of the fact that there's zero shame in that. There's no reason to hide from that. I know so many people, John, and I'm sure you do too, who have been afraid to chase the things that they really want because they feel intrinsically undeserving. And so I just thought, you know what? They gave me this microphone. That was a crazy idea, by the way. They gave me this microphone. I'm going to do something more than tell jokes and do celebrity gossip with it. Until they drag me kicking and screaming away from it, I'm going to use it.
In 2015, I know one of the stations out there in Charlotte did a story on you, but when did you first speak up in public about your living with domestic violence as a child and into your teenage years?
Well, that was probably, 2000.
That was 2015.
Yeah, I probably spoke up for the first time in about 2004, and here's why. I didn't think I had the right to call myself a domestic violence survivor because it was my mother that was the target. But that was false thinking on my part and also ignorant. Everyone who lives in a violent household is victimized of domestic violence. And I think my unwillingness to claim that was maybe the last step for me in really shedding all of that shame and baggage from the past. Because the truth is growing up like that, I may not have been the target of the violence, but I was shaped by it.
Right.
And some of my less glorious life choices are the result of that. And I've had to work really hard.
When you got the job in 1992, how long did it take before you felt some sense of confidence in being on the mic and being on that show with Bob? Or do you still question it today?
It took a long time. It took such a long time. It took such a long time for me to feel like I wasn't the new kid on the block.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's hysterical to me? There are still people in the radio industry, still, unfortunately, men in the radio industry who speak to me as though I just got off the bus and I'm just learning how the business works.
Yeah, see, I can't, that to me, then they haven't done their homework on you then.
It's a very misogynistic industry, but John, I didn't know anything about radio. See, when I was growing up out west in Wyoming, we didn't have radio, television, or a telephone. So I didn't have any relationship with radio as a listener until maybe late high school, college. And even then, it wasn't some passionate thing. I was more of a reader. I'm a bookworm, always have been. So I didn't really know anything about radio. I certainly didn't know anything about the craft or the business of radio.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had to do an awful lot of work to even be able to call myself, I am a radio professional, without cracking up.
But you know what? I think that lends to the way you approach it on a daily basis, because you're just you. I get the sense when we're listening to Bob and Sheri, you guys are just kind of hanging out and you're letting people in on your conversation every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's taken me like literally right up till this very minute to own my business and my knowledge and my ability to do the craft of it, all of that. I mean, it's not a business that's been historically friendly to female talent anyway, right. But, and I had to, I've had to be very diplomatic about owning my power, because it's a business of a lot of misogynistic chuckleheads, if we're being candid. And, one thing that I've learned is that you have to work with people, even if you think they're kind of dipshits. You still have to work with them, right? So you have to sit there and go, well, you're kind of a dipshit, but you're what's in front of me, and we have to work together, and it's going to be on me to figure out how to do that. And that's where I can't tell you how valuable clinical mental health training is in the media business. I use all the same skills on my coworkers that I used when I was doing clinicals in a lockdown behavioral health unit in a hospital. All of the same skills apply, because you have to sometimes deal with the fact that people don't like you, feel threatened by you, think what you do is unnecessary or stupid, think they can do it better. And you have to say that and then move on and get the job done. And that was a learning curve too. I mean, I definitely had a chip on my shoulder for a long time about that.
When you read your bio, it says, award-winning broadcaster recognized multiple times by the Alliance for Women in Media for her outstanding and realistic depiction of women, named one of the most influential women in American radio every year since 2010. Is that what you set out to do that first day when you sat down behind that microphone?
Without knowing it, I would say yes. I mean, look, when you come up, my daddy was a meth cook. My mom left when I was 12. I had a lot to prove. I had so much to prove, even if I was the only person I was proving it to. And at the same time that I had so many things to prove and such a chip on my shoulder, I wanted to be a trailblazer. I wanted to have a big, interesting life. I wanted that so desperately. I didn't know how to get from where I was to achieving it, but I wanted it. And I was determined that every decision, every fork in the road, that I was going to choose the option that brought me closer to that. So, for example, I get this radio job, and I'm doing it for about 6 months, and they call me in. They want me to sign a contract. And they slide a contract across the table. And I looked at it and I slid it back and said, whatever you're paying him is what you're going to have to pay me. And they said, no, we can't do that. You have seniority and you don't have any experience and blah, 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 blah. And I said, I just can't come here and feel good about you people unless I'm getting equal pay for equal work. And it was such a mind blower that it had to go all the way to the corporate board of directors to be approved. And you know what? I would do it that same way today, even though today I know something that young me didn't know, that
Right.
that was crazy ballsy, right? Today I would be more cognizant of corporate politics and all of that sort of stuff. But back then I was like, excuse me, I didn't pull myself up off of welfare and get away from a meth cook to be underpaid for the same job. So I would say right from the beginning, I definitely had an agenda. I won't advertise products that I think are disempowering to women. That's been a fight over the years. I won't add my voice to the negative chorus of, oh, you're too fat. Oh, you need to be on a diet. That's been a problem over the years. I've been really consistent about that because radio job or no radio job, I have to live with myself. And like I said, I worked so hard to get here. I'm not selling it out.
What do you consider Bob? Is he your coworker? Is he a friend? Is he a mentor? To me, he would have to see the good and maybe the bad about Sheri's background and know that she's trying to overcome. So he's more than just a coworker, and I would think he's almost more than just a friend.
He's more like a brother at this point than anything. Bob, I don't know what Bob saw in me that he made a decision on the spot that this person is the person that I want. Mm-hmm. I don't know what he saw, but he saw it. And to Bob's endless credit, from day one, he sat back and he said, he told everyone around me, unbeknownst to me, don't try to teach her anything. Don't try to coach her in any way. She's got to figure this out for herself or it's not going to work. And he protected me from, oh my God, the hate mail, the criticism. He shielded me from all of that. I was blissfully unaware that people were like, shut this crazy woman up. Like I had no idea that was happening. And he never, ever, other than to show me which button turned the mic on and off, he never, ever stepped in. And that, I think, as much as anything else, is a critical factor in why the show took off and why our partnership took off.
Yeah, because because if somebody would have said, okay, Bob, here's the resume of the person that is going to sit next to you for the next 25 years. She's had this, she's gone through this, she's overcome this. Here's your partner. I don't know if he would have, if he would have really thought that was the possible next quarter century of his life.
I think that he was stunned by where I come from, honestly, because if you remember, the person that he met was in a business context, and I showed up and was like, all right, here's what I've written, here's how we're going to block it, here's what we're going to do, let's go. He had no idea, like, what a little piece of spunky gutter trash he was dealing with, right? No idea about me at all. And one thing that he was surprised by is how open I was. He would say to me sometimes, are you sure that you want people to know that about you? And I was like, listen, I would rather they know it about me because I told them, than to be trying to pose as someone I'm not or live some life that wasn't authentic. But yeah, it's been a handful for Bob, for sure. And the other thing is, Bob was a giant star. He was a huge star, radio star, TV star, and then here I come along. And for him to step aside and make room for that, and then ultimately to be in some ways kind of overshadowed because I'm just unusual in the business. It's a business that's unwelcoming to women. So there weren't lots of versions of me up and down the dial. I think that was harder for him than people know. And he was much more gracious and generous about it than people might give him credit for.
You know, a lot of people have thoughts that they want to do this and they want to do that. It seems to me like everything you've thought you wanted to do, you just went ahead and did it, whether it be triathlete, whether it be go back and get your master's. But I've always been one who has been fascinated with the process of someone wanting to write a book. I've had a thought in my mind. Of course, I write in little 30-second or 1-minute stories every day. I write tons of those every day on a newscast. What was the process like, and what finally got you to the point in 2004 when you started to write that book, the first of your 2 books?
Well, you know, remember, I'm a book person, and I just thought there was no higher calling in life than to be a writer. I originally was going to be an anthropologist and an academic, and I assumed that I would publish as an academic. So now I'm in radio, and I'm just going to let that dream go. I couldn't. So I was blogging, John, and my show, you know, of course, is syndicated. So I've got this blog that I was writing for an entertainment weekly in Greensboro and blogging every week on a website. And one day, a man who is a literary agent caught our show in San Diego, where we were syndicated at the time. And he listened to the show, and he was like, wow, who is this person? And he was curious, and he Googled me, and he landed on my blog, and he read all of my blog entries, cold called me and said, I'm a literary agent, and you're a writer. Let's do a book. And Cinderella never felt more magical than I felt on that day. Again, you know, like just the beautiful, unexpected serendipity. So I was like, well, I would love to write a book. It's always been my dream, but I'm not a fiction writer. You know, I would love to write about sparkly vampires and become a billionaire, but it's just not in my head. And he said, no, you just need to write about like where you are right now. Where I was right at the moment was pregnant with my first daughter. And so that's where Hello, My Name is Mommy came from. And we ended up getting a multi-book deal with St. Martin's Press. And so I became an author. It was so exciting. But I'm not very good at self-promoting. I feel like so obnoxious. I had a hard time with the book tour and selling the book because I just felt like such a giant slab of ham and obnoxious, stuck up and awkward. And so I'm not very good at being self-promotional. But I love doing it. And when my younger daughter stops being so high maintenance, I'm going to do another one. Yeah, I've just thrown myself into being a mom, and that eats up all your time.
Yeah, see, that to me is somebody actually taking the steps to do it, because I've talked about it for, 18, 20 years, and I just can't find the time to do it. But you seem to find the time to do triathlete and masters and oh yeah, be syndicated in 4 dozen different radio markets across the country. How close did you come to leaving when you got your master's? Because I know you've talked about this before. Did you come really close? I mean, because you've got it's a great product, but did you really come close to walking away?
Yeah. In fact, I went to the company that I was working for at the time and said, thanks for the memories, but I'm unhappy. And the only way I'll stay is if I own it, all of it, and it's mine. I just don't want to be an employee anymore. I feel like there are things I want to do with the radio show and on the digital side that you're not letting me do. And they fought me. It took me a year of planning and 6 months of negotiating. They fought me hard. They didn't want me to not be an employee. So there was a period last summer, a couple weeks in July, where I thought we were done. And I spent a lot of time figuring out the math and what it would take for me to walk away, because I thought that we were done. And then it literally at like 2 minutes to midnight, I guess they realized in that moment that I wasn't bluffing. And they said, fine, we'll do it your way, if that's what it's going to take. And that was August 1st of last year. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I've just never been happier, even though I'm making a fraction of what I was making because I don't have that guaranteed income. And it's a lot more work. It's 7 days a week, but I'm just happier. But yeah, I was literally sitting on a beach chair adding up whether or not I could afford for my little girl to keep dancing if I left radio.
And that was when you decided you were going to go and work at the hospital too? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I was going to go back full time because I love it. Some of the happiest hours of my life were spent in, in a lockdown psych unit. I just loved it. I loved the people, and I loved that you could come to someone who was at a crisis point and make even a tiny difference. Like, it just felt real to me and meaningful. And I haven't ruled it out. I may still end up there, just not until it's time.
In 2016, you went back to Winthrop to speak, the place where you got your master's. Now, you've spoken at a lot of different places. I've seen a lot of videos. And by the way, I want to see you speak in person because they're hilarious. I've only seen clips of them because they only put a little 3-minute clip on YouTube. But what did it mean to you to go back and speak? Was that one a little more special than any other?
You know, it was, because that was the hardest thing I've ever done, was going back to graduate school. I was a single parent working full-time in full-time grad school, full course load, plus a full clinical internship of like 30 hours a week, plus my radio job. And my hair was falling out. I was grinding my teeth. Like, I was crying myself to sleep at night. It was so, so hard, but it blew me wide open. And I learned so much, and it gave me more than I could have ever, so much value for my tuition dollars. And it was such a big accomplishment to be able to do that. And so to go back to Winthrop, it was the punctuation mark on that experience. And I'm really proud to be a social worker. Like, I wear that label with pride, and I take that code of ethics really seriously. I think it's a noble calling, and I'm honored to be able to align myself with that. And going back to Winthrop was a way of really kind of sealing that deal, you know?
Mm-hmm. I often tell people, and I will continue to tell people, that part of my success, 95% of my success here and at home, is due to my wife. I married a saint. With all the long hours that I have to do, she did most of the bringing up of our kids. Our kids are as successful as they are and as independent as they are now because of Sheila. And I tell people this all the time. She's my best friend, but she's also the best thing that could ever happen to me. How important is your family to your success? Your daughters, it had to be difficult on them when you're doing this. And your other family members, it had to be difficult on them as you were going through this and doing everything that you were doing along the way.
It was really, you know, my family is everything. Like, I have not been willing to compromise much where my kids are concerned. And so that's meant, you know, that I've run myself ragged in some ways. But I waited a long time to be a mom, and I wanted my daughters to have a mother that I didn't have. And so it was hard for me to be doing research papers when they wanted me to play or watch a movie with them. But I had a lot of help. The man I'm married to, we've been together for a long time. He was really critical. Other family members stepped in for me. But the reason that I was able to keep going is I knew I was doing it for them, because this industry that I'm in, that has been very good to me, is not a stable, safe bet. And I needed to be able to take care of my kids no matter what. And I knew that going back to school would give me one more tool in my kit that would make it possible for me to always provide for them and give them a safe and warm and loving home with enough food to eat, things I didn't have. So part of my motivation for going back to school and doing so well is the wolf at the door. I had a conversation with my older daughter the other night. We were talking about college, and we were talking about, you know, do you really want to commit to a school where you're just going to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown at all times? Is that really what you want? I said, I've lived like that, and I don't know that I want that for you. And my daughter said, yeah, but Mom, you've always had so much to run away from. Well, I raised my daughters to have so much to run toward. Mm-hmm. And it's a really different thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them running away from chaos and poverty the way I have. I want them running toward big goals and big dreams and aspirations. And they watched me go through school, and I think someday the lessons that they learn from that will inspire them to know that you're never too old, it's never too late, you're never too busy. It's never the wrong time to jump in and chase that thing that you want.
You asked your daughter on one of your oddcasts, I don't know if it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was. I lose track of time as I get older. But you asked her what it's like to be a 14-year-old. I'm asking you, what is it like to raise teenagers, teenage girls specifically, in today's day and age? I remember how scared I was 10, 12 years ago when all of my kids were teenagers. Now we've got school shootings. Now we've got social media and bullying. What's it like for you, Mom, to raise teenagers in 2018?
I feel like my heart is in my throat all the time. And I wouldn't have done well in this hyper 24/7 surveillance universe that they've grown up in. The hard thing is that you try to give them everything that you can in terms of values and guidelines and morals and all of that. But they have decision moments coming at them all of the time. And then they have those half-baked adolescent brains. And they don't have, I mean, we know scientifically they don't have optimal judgment and a real powerful understanding of consequences. And so you're just scared. I'm scared of all the old-fashioned things, stranger danger, botulism, lockjaw, whatever, undercooked pork, whatever I was raised to be afraid of. And then I'm scared of all of the things that I can't protect them from. Their day never ends because of social media. Their day never ends. They never get to come home from school and decompress. It follows them everywhere. And we've had some ugly run-ins with that and with mean girl behaviors. My youngest daughter has both been the practitioner and the victim of mean girl behaviors. And I just look at them and think, my job is to keep you alive until you're baked and can keep yourself going, right?
Yeah.
And when I was a teenager, I was raised to believe that the worst thing that could befall you was a pregnancy in high school. Boy, oh, for the good old days.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, for the good old days. I never worried about being shot at school. I never worried about being preyed on by some online predator. I never worried about being bullied into the point of being suicidal. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was difficult having a newborn and a 2-year-old. Those were the easy days. That was a spa retreat.
Yeah. What do you guys do when there's a song playing in the studio? Do you sing along with songs? Do you have a favorite song that you want to play every day, but Bob won't let you, or the director won't let you? And your director's a Phillies fan too. Props to your director, who's a Phillies fan. I search far and wide for Philadelphia Phillies fans, and I followed him today on Twitter, and he followed me back. So thanks to him.
He's a fanatic Phillies fan. So the problem with working in radio is we hear your favorite song before you do, and then we hear it 10,000 times. To the point where you're like, oh my God, if I have to hear this song that I once loved one more time, I'm going to tear my own ears off. I was in Walgreens the other day and a Katy Perry song came on and I was like, this is a bop. I love this. But I can remember when we were playing it every 12 minutes, I wanted to slam my own head in the door. So here's what we do during the songs. Sometimes Bob puts his headphones on and plays air guitar and drums. Mostly we all bolt for the bathroom or talk a bunch of smack to each other about our coworkers, and then we turn the mics back on and do the show.
I remember those days of doing radio, and I loved it. I started in radio. As a matter of fact, John Hancock, who's in your building, hired me for my first part-time job in radio in Scranton, Pennsylvania, back in 1984.
Oh, my God. I love John Hancock. I filled in for him. He does a conservative news talk show. I filled in for him one day while he was having a medical procedure.
Yeah, I saw that.
Buddy, I'm not sure there's enough money to get me to work in conservative news talk. Everyone was so angry. It made me really sad and depressed. Like, I needed to go home and have a stiff drink afterward because everyone was so filled with rage and they were so pissed off about everything. And that's just not a way to live.
Are you still as excited pulling into the parking lot and into that parking space every morning as you were on that first day in 1992?
Yeah, I love what I do. I'm very, very lucky. I can't believe how lucky I am. I mean, when I look at where I come from, the people I come from, and the experiences I've had, I cannot believe that I do work that I love in a way that I want to do it with people that I love to work with. I was asked not too long ago what my goals are. And I'm like, I'm going to have to come up with some, because what could be better than doing what I do? Yes, I would like to write another book. Yes, I would like to win the Powerball. But honestly, I feel kind of spoiled that I'm just so happy with where I am that I'm not chasing that next thing. Does that make sense?
Sure does. You've been very generous with your time. Last question for you. Fill in the blank. It's been a good day if blank.
It's been a good day if neither of my daughters has a meltdown, the dog doesn't wet his diaper, and I have time at the end of the day for a glass of wine with my husband.
Sheri, it has been a pleasure. I could literally talk to you for several more hours because I just, knowing the work that you have done and the help that you have brought to so many people just by enjoying what you do and the position you have and the microphone you use, it really has been a lot of fun. I truly appreciate you taking the time today, kicking it off with talking about your time here at 322 Shipyard, but all the people who listen to you on a daily basis, I hope they learn something a little bit more about Sheri today.
Oh, John, thank you so much. And as you know, I would be happy to talk your ears, slam off your head. I'm definitely a talker. I'll be coming to Wilmington in December. I'm really excited to come back home and see my old stomping grounds. And I cannot tell you how thrilled I was when we signed on with WGNI. I was just like, it's full circle. I started out there, now I'm back there, and it just was so meaningful. I can't even, there aren't words. I'm so excited. Thank you for today.
Thanks. It's been a blast today, and I appreciate you taking the time, Sheri. Thank you.
Take care.
Once again, a big thank you to Sheri Lynch for sparing some of her valuable time to sit down for this week's podcast. You can listen to the Bob and Sheri radio show every weekday morning in the Wilmington area on 102.7 WGNI. bobandsheri.com is the website. They have a podcast every day. Sheri has an oddcast. It's a hoot to listen to. You've got to check that out as well. She has blogs. She's written books. I have links to all of those things inside this story that you'll find on the One-on-One with John Evans page on WECT.com. Before we leave, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Let me know what you think about this episode and the others that we've had so far. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of One-on-One.